Welcome, 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 Toolkit Masters. Fantastic to have you here. We've got a great session on today. It's going to be really relevant to you as well as lots of other people. It was a great question that came through the ask@teamleadertoolkit.com email, and it's something that I want to share with you. And I got their permission to share this with you. So hopefully you're going to really enjoy it today. We've got a few people on the line, so that's fantastic. Hopefully you can all see and hear me. If you can't, let me know. If you're silent, I'll assume it's all good, and that will be great. All right. So without further ado, what are we going to talk about today? So the thing that's on somebody's mind, might be on yours, is how do I deal with a team member who is toxic and poisoning my other team members? So have you had this? Have you had somebody on your team that is disruptive or oppositional, or just being quite toxic to the other people on your team? So therefore it's got all sorts of consequences and effects and all those sorts of things going on. But we'll talk about those in a little while. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you deal with that one person on your team that is causing risk for everyone else? All right, so without further ado, let's start. So just making sure everyone can see and hear me. I think everybody is good. Yeah, I think we're all on. I can see us all on. So if you can see and hear me, just write in there a hi or a hello or yes, I can see and hear you, just so I know, and we can move on from there. That would be great. All right. Great session on today. I'm really excited. Oh, hi, Niall. How you going? Hi, Tony. Hi, Flick. All right. So we're on. Fantastic. All right. So without further ado, let's start because we've got some really great stuff on today. And it was a really great question. I did a bit of a keynote speak yesterday at a business breakfast. So this came through that as well. It was a very similar question that came through the email and this. So let's start. All right. So how do you deal with a team member who's toxic and poisoning your other team members? And this is quite common. It's not something that, is rare. It happens a lot of the time. And, whether you have inherited this person or whether they've just turned a bit toxic over a period of time for a particular reason, and we'll talk about those reasons why in a little while, but you have to deal with them. So what are you going to do to be able to do it? So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about what creates this toxic environment. So why would this person be reacting in this way? We talk about the effects that it has on the rest of your team. And we also talk about the 5 effective steps that you can do to try and deal with this situation. So bear with me on this and we'll get through it together. Okay, so why are they doing this? This is driving you nuts, right? And a lot of times we put it down to, especially if there's been a change in behavior, it could be stress at home, there could be personal circumstances that have changed, all those sorts of things. And yes, that could be the case, but there are some other indicators that this could be happening as well. So let's have a talk about what could be causing this for this particular person, this toxic person that you've got on your team. So we've talked about stress at home, and it could be stress at work too. Is this a new role they're in? Is there extra pressures, all those sorts of things that you have to take into account? Another one is lack of motivation. So role alignment to somebody's strengths and skills is really, really important. So let me tell you a story. I was working for this corporate company that used to change my roles all the time. So I think I did about 10 roles in about 8 years for that particular company. And as much as I would put my hand up and go, yeah, of course, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. It wasn't until I was in my 6th or 7th or 8th role that I thought, oh, this is not aligning to what I was originally wanting in the business to start with. So when I first started in the business, I had this great role. I was coaching team members. Everything was great. I was thriving. I was utilizing all my strengths. And then I ended up in another role that actually wasn't using any of my strengths. It was a huge learning curve. And I struggled with motivation. I got concrete boots and it really dragged me back. So motivation is another one that you can look at. Lack of additional responsibility. So they might be bored. So are they looking around and seeing everybody doing some really exciting projects and they don't have a project? Or are they doing the same job over and over again and nothing's changed? So maybe this person wants a bit of additional responsibility. Maybe there's some more things that they would like to do. So it's worth having a chat about that. We'll talk about how you have those conversations in a minute. So we've talked about the skill sets not matching your role. What about no support from the boss? Now, that might be you. It might be higher up. So there's a story I want to tell you about a team member that I knew who was usually a great team member. He was keen. He was enthusiastic. He was willing to go the extra mile, all those sorts of things, got on well with others, had high credibility. And then all of a sudden, he turned the other way and got really oppositional and wasn't going to do anything extra but the bare minimum, all these sorts of things. And I thought, why has this happened? So I sat him down and I sort of had a chat to him. And what had happened was he'd gone and put a deposit on a boat or a car or a bike or something, and then he didn't have the rest of the money to pay for it. So he put in an application of his workplace to cash out some of his leave, which is quite common, right? So then he was going to use that money to buy the rest of this particular vehicle. What happened was the HR in that area said, oh, no, you have to have a minimum of 20 leave days left and you won't have that, so I'm going to have to say no to this application. But there was no conversation between him and the HR person. So the HR person didn't realise how important this was to that person. So anyway, he got the application back declined. And of course, this turned him off. He got really bitter. He'd obviously been really looking forward to getting this particular vehicle. I'm not sure if he lost his deposit or not, but it really turned him off the company that he worked for. He felt unsupported. He felt unlistened to, and he just turned a 180 degree. And he stayed like that for quite some time until we could get it out of him what had gone on. So think about those sorts of things. It might be a small thing to you, but it might be a huge thing to them. So are they getting the support that they need from you or from higher up and other people? Maybe they've reached their limits of capability, which is another one. So what happens is as we evolve as a business, as things come around and more technology starts with us, sometimes people can't evolve as quickly. So their capability gets to a point where they are saturated and they don't have any more capability to give. And instead of putting their hand up and saying, hey, I don't know how to do this and I don't think I'm ever going to know, what happens is most of the time people get confrontational and they push back and they get fearful. And that fear comes out in behaviours like, getting cross, getting short with people, not taking on new knowledge, not accepting new ways, not accepting change. And this is all masking fear, trepidation, scared of people knowing that they don't know how to do it, all this sort of stuff. So if they have reached their limits of capability, and you would probably know that in the back of your mind, then what can we do to support them? Is there a role similar to what they were doing before where they feel comfortable within the business? If the role needs to evolve, then what are you going to do about this person? Because obviously they're at capacity and they can't do anything else. So that could be another reason. There might be a conflict in the team. So you might not be aware of it yet, but there might be some conflict on your team and they might be having some real personality issues with some people on your team. And then they might be feeling targeted or bullied. And what it's coming out is the behavior of pushing back, not caring, not contributing, all those sorts of things. So just be aware of that one. That could be it too. Another one is they might not be receptive to feedback either. So if they're getting feedback about how they can do things differently, how can they be the best version of themselves and all this, and they're pushing back, they might not be receptive and be able to take on feedback very well. And that is an art to be mastered, let me tell you. A lot of people can't take on feedback. So if that's the case, this might be causing them to push back, be confrontational, be oppositional, give you a hard time, all those sorts of things. So it's something that you need to work on together and bite-sized pieces of little bits of feedback. And also making an example of yourself of how you got given feedback and how you changed it so they can see that it's actually an okay, safe environment to receive that feedback because you receive it as well and you action it. So those are sorts of things. So it might not just be something's happened at home. It could be any of those as well and probably a lot more. But it just gives you an idea to look outside the box, look outside the square and have a think about what could be impacting this person. Now, if you have inherited this person from another leader who hasn't done anything about it in the past, it's going to be a hard slog, let me tell you. It's going to be difficult because you're going to have to chip away at that person until they, you can turn them around. Or alternatively, you have to go through a process of a more formal disciplinary type environment. But before we get on to that, let's have a look at what the effects that leader can have on the rest of your team and the damages that it can cause. So what they'll do is they'll stop contributing to team meetings. So then you're not getting any of their insights, their ideas. And as they're sitting back looking bored and all those sorts of things, the rest of the team members are looking at them going, oh, is that how we're supposed to act? Is that the new normal now? And of course it isn't. They'll also spread negativity amongst the team. So if they're feeling discouraged, if they're feeling disgruntled, then they're going to spread that negativity around the team. And those that were positive or those that were sitting on the fence can quite easily get swayed on the other side, and you don't want that. They can stop other team members contributing or to the project or the job they're doing. So if they're not contributing to your team meetings, they could actually have a little whisper in people's ear about how crap this is and how it shouldn't be going on and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, everybody else starts to think like them. And you need to stop that contagiousness of negativity. They could bring bitterness and fights within the team. So you might have some people going, you know what, this is not on. Your behaviour is a bit, crap. We need to change that. And then they're going to get, infighting and all the conflict and all that sort of stuff, which is really going to be pulling your it will drag your production down a lot. It can throw your plans off track. So all of a sudden you've got these plans and KPIs that you've got to meet and goals that you're going to set and all those sorts of things. And of course, having this and dragging on your team is going to put a halt or at least a pause on those plans. And also it can increase your cost. So it can increase your cost, your timelines to get to your KPI. You might be finding you're not getting to deadlines, all those sorts of things. So it's a huge amount of damage that it causes, not only on your team personally, because now they have to carry this other team member that's not working very well, and they can start getting resentful as well, but also your deadlines, your KPIs, your costs, your timelines, all those sorts of things. So it's fairly damaging, which is why I'm going to say to you, you need to make sure that you act on it. It's going to be a difficult situation. I'm not going to shy away from that, but it's something that you need to deal with. So let's get on to the next slide. So what do you do? Okay, so you've got this, you might have inherited it, might be somebody that's just turned over the last few months. What are you going to do about it? So there's a couple of things that you can do. And what I would say to you is the first one is actually understanding there is a problem. So often we have found that leaders will bury it. So if you inherited somebody, it's because that previous leader buried it and tried to pretend there wasn't a problem and that it would all go away in time. Well, it doesn't go away in time. And let me tell you from experience, it actually exacerbates with time. It gets worse. So the quicker you can jump onto this, the quicker you'll be able to resolve it and get your team back working to the standard and expectations that you have. So first, understand there's a problem and make sure that you're not throwing your head in the sand. Okay, if there's just been a couple of incidences, yes, maybe you can let those go. If this has been like a couple of weeks or a couple of months and it's been going on for some time, we need to nip it in the bud. If you've inherited somebody with those behaviours that's been happening for years, we need to nip it in the bud. Okay, so once you understand there's a problem, what's the next thing you do? So what I want you to do next is I want you to reiterate the expectations. And what do I mean by that is if you are on the unlocking portal, if you go back to module 2, you've got my expectations of my team and my team's expectations of me. And we go through a whole activity of how we gather those expectations. Now we need to reiterate those expectations. If you haven't done that, do that activity. It's going to be really, really important for you setting a line in the sand. So you setting the bar, the standard that is the minimum, okay? So go in there, reiterate those expectations. Say, hey, remember we talked about this then when we did these expectations. I want you to think about, these are what they are. These are what we agreed on. Have them up on a poster or a Post-it note or whatever. And it might be things like, you know, making sure they share knowledge with each other, making sure they support each other, making sure they respect each other, and then going into examples of what that looks like. So what does respecting each other look like? Okay, so it's not screaming and shouting. It's making sure you're not talking over other people, and you know what does that look like in the workplace? So those might be your expectations. You might be others, but reiterate those expectations as your whole team. So get them together and say, just reiterating and going over these expectations. These are the minimum standard. This is the line in the sand that we all agreed on, and this is what you want from me. So you're going to go through expectations of them, and then you can recover and refresh their expectations of you. So you can put that poster back up on the board and go, and remember, this is what you want from me. And if you get a snidey little remark from your toxic person, like, yeah, that's not happening, or yeah, you're supposed to support us, but you're not, or whatever, that's a win. And I'll tell you why that's a win, because finally this person is opening up and you're going to get to the root cause of what's going on. Now, I'm not saying that you know, haul them over the coals in front of people. Absolutely not. But you can say, do you know what, Jim, that's a great insight from you. I'd really like to hear about that some more. How about we have a chat after this? Okay, so if they've got a bugbear, if they're thinking they're not being supported or whatever else, this is your chance to sort of nip it in the bud and go, okay, put that smelly fish on the table, Jim. Let's hear all about it. I want to know what's going through your head. What are your insights? What are you cross about? You know, those sorts of things. So again, reiterate their expectations of a team, well, of you, and reiterate your expectations of them. So making sure that they're both really, really clear and understood. The next thing you want to do is leave it for a couple of weeks, see how things happen. Now you've reiterated the expectations. If things aren't going to plan, then you need to take this person aside on one-on-one. If they didn't do a snidey remark during that expectations chat, they've just kept quiet, that's okay too, but really, really take a close look at their behaviours and how they're working and all that, and their performance over the next couple of weeks. If there has been no change and they're still oppositional, they're still negative and all those sorts of things, then you bring them in for a one-on-one. And you need to sit them down and let them know what their behaviour is that is not acceptable. You need to say, we reiterated our expectations and these are the things that I can see missing from you. You're not respecting others. And for an example, I saw you out on the floor, on the operations floor with John, and you were arguing and shouting and poking him in the chest with your finger. That's not on. That's not respecting each other. So you want to be really clear cut and firm with what you've seen, okay? Then what you want to do is you want to come to some sort of solution in that meeting. Now, it might not be in this meeting. It might take a couple of meetings. But you need to arrive to a solution and they need to have skin in the game. So what do I mean by that? So you've told them their behaviours. You've told them and reiterated your expectations. You've said that the behaviours they're showing is not up to scratch and you need them to change. And then you need to have them share with you, so what are we going to do about this? What can we do differently? What support do you need to ensure that this is happening? So you're going to try and get to the crux of their problem in this conversation, and then you're going to arrive at a solution together. They need to have skin in the game. They need to have ownership over this. Otherwise, if they don't, you're going to be fighting them all the way and dragging them along, and it's just not going to be very conducive for you or them. So making sure that is agreed upon by both of you. And then once you've got an agreement, and those agreements could look like, okay, so, you know, you're going to come and have a chat to me every week. You're going to get a mentor. You're going to make sure that, you know, if you feel emotive about a conversation, you're going to walk away. You know, all these things, really tangible things that they can actually do. Then you're going to make sure that you write that down and hold them accountable for it. And you can write that down with them there, or you can say, okay, jot down some notes. Okay, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this, we'll do that. Why don't you come back to me on Tuesday at 3 p.m. and I'll make a plan, and then we can agree that what's in the plan is what we've discussed today. And then get them to sign it off if you want. So this is your action plan, you know, making sure that they're using the right behaviours, making sure that they're not falling below performance levels, all those sorts of things. And then you need to follow up with them, and you can say, okay, this is going to be a 3-month plan, or maybe it's an 8-week plan, or maybe it's a 6-week plan. Whatever you think is really relevant, make sure you hold them to it. So you can say to them, okay, so I'm going to have a chat to you. Let's make it 10 a.m. every Friday. Bring your plan in and let's tick off as we're going of what things are working and what things aren't. And let's see if we can offer you more support to try and get you over the line. Okay, because what's happening here is you're making them accountable for their behavior, but you're also starting a disciplinary, formal type conversation. So if the behavior doesn't change, if the performance doesn't change, you've given them support, you've given them coaching, you're meeting with them every week, you've got the accountability plan, you've got the personal sort of things in place, you've got their signature that they've both agreed, you've both agreed on it. If they're still falling behind, then that starts moving into like a formal warning. Okay, so if you've inherited this person, they're not willing to change, they've been doing this for years, they own this place, you're not going to change me. This is where you start down the formal line. And until you get to, okay, there's a formal warning because you're not making your achievement at work plan, or you're not being accountable for your action plan. I'm going to give you a formal warning now, blah, 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 blah. This is the consequences. And speak to your HR manager. So get in with them to sort of help this. But this is what you can do to try and get you to move into that if it need be. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully that once they've got skin in the game, once they realise that, you know, you're willing to help them out a little bit, hopefully that will work. Okay, so I think that's all we've got for the time being. Yes, it is. So really, really difficult situation that you're in when you've got one toxic person. I've seen it a lot. Usually it's somebody that's been around for a long time, and because, you know, they've been around a long time, they've seen lots of changes, and maybe they're a little bit adverse to change. So we need to build their change resilience if we can. I guess the other thing is if it is somebody who's been in your business for a short period of time, then I'll be looking at, well, something's happened, something's triggered it. What can I do to get to what that root cause is so that we can give them the support they need and help? Yes, and as I say, if you've inherited this problem that's been going on for years and years and years, it's going to be a tough road, and it might take you 6-8 months to actually remove this person out of the business if they're not willing to change. But it is worth it. Believe you me, it is worth it if you put the time and effort in, and you've got this regular show of coaching, supporting, you know, action planning. You've got everything in place to try and set this person up for success. Because you can bet your bottom dollar, if it gets to the point where this person is disgruntled, excuse me, disgruntled, leaves the business and goes to Fair Work Australia is going to want to see all the paperwork that led up to their dismissal. So they want to see how many conversations you had with them, how much coaching they had, how much support they had, how many conversations they had, how many warnings they had. And if that's not all in place, you might have to reinstate that person. And once you've reinstated a person, it is really, really difficult to let them go again. Okay, so let's do this the right way. So I hope that's helped. Let me know if there is anything else going on in your world that you want to talk to me about. Have you got any questions? Have you got a toxic person in your team that you are struggling with? If you are, let me know and let's have a chat about it. Niall, important to get alignment with your boss to ensure there's a true, it does not go above your head. Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's fantastic advice, Niall, and really spot on. So as you're going through this process, you will have a really close relationship with your boss and telling them every step of the way that you're going and getting their support. Absolutely. I've seen team leaders use the excuse that they don't have the support from their boss, so they're not going to do anything, and they continue with these people that are just toxic in their business, and it impacts you as a leader too, because it's exhausting. It impacts your team because they get resentful, and then they're taking it out on you. Why aren't you doing anything about it? So yes, Niall, it's really, really important to get alignment with your boss, and also sort of mention it to HR too, and keep them up to date with all the things that you're doing with this person, so that they can see that there's been a pattern of support and coaching along the way. So great point, Niall. Well done. So is there anything else that anybody wants to add, any insights they want to share? If not, we've got a great session on next week. Next week. So we've only got a couple to go before the end of the year. We finish Q&A Thursdays mid-December. Okay, so mid-December will be the last one until mid-January when they come back online again. And we've got some changes coming through too with Team Leader Toolkit, which I'm really excited about, which I'll tell you guys about in the very near future. I'm actually coming to Melbourne in a couple of weeks to see my Ego Pharmaceutical team. So I'm coming down to see you guys. And I will see the Dixon Valve guys and the Balfours guys and all that sort of stuff because they're over here, so along the way. So I will catch up with you all face to face and tell you about the exciting changes that are happening to the Team Leader Toolkit and what's going to happen in the new year and how that's going to look. So bear with me on that one. There's going to be some great stuff. Without further ado, if you've got a question, if you've got a burning platform, if you've got an issue, if you need a solution, then contact me on ask@teamleadertoolkit.com. I will answer you within 2 and 24 hours. It's usually a really quick turnaround. And then I'll ask your permission if I can put it as a webinar so that we can share that knowledge with the rest of our team members. All right, without further ado, have a fantastic day. If I don't speak to you beforehand, have a fantastic weekend, and I will catch up with you guys next week. Bye for now.